Hello there, YouTube. We are back with the fourth installment of the Road to Nat series. The big tournament is right around the corner. I'm super excited and definitely on that last minute grind to really flesh out my build and to be as prepared as possible for all the potential matchups that I'm, going to be facing in the next couple of weeks. For all our new viewers out there, the purpose of this series, or the hope of this series, is to really give you guys a glimpse as to how my preparations are going, what my thought process is like when I'm prepping my decks and building my decks for like certain matchups, and how my approach is for that, and how I plan to go toe-to-toe with some of these big meta contenders at Nationals, like I said, just in a few weeks. Since our last video, I've made some pretty sizable changes actually to my deck, but otherwise I don't envision any major structural changes to this deck at least. Envision any major structural changes to, which I've been really enjoying. I think it's running really smoothly now, and I'm very happy with how it's performed. I do plan to keep testing as the next couple weeks go by, and maybe throw in some slight changes here and there. Full transparency, I will probably keep my exact list and my exact build under wraps for now, just for the sake of keeping the sauce on simmer until the tournament is over. But I will definitely be walking you through some of the thought processes and why I've made some of the potential changes that I have made. That being said, a lot of these points that I'm going to be making for any of these decks that we've talked about thus far, for example, like red hybrid, purple hybrid, etc., I do think that these points ring true not just for Mirage, which is the deck I'm going to be playing, but it does ring true for a lot of decks just in general, right? This is very good sort of advice on how to approach these matchups overall. So hopefully you guys do get something out of it regardless of what decks you're playing. Like I said, hopefully it just helps you when you're deck building, preparing for webcam tournaments, local tournaments, etc. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys have any feedback for this series. I'm definitely open to, making this work for everybody, because this is also something I plan to do moving forward as we start the next competitive season with more regionals and more national tournaments too. So definitely something I want to keep going for you guys. Last episode, we focused a lot on purple hybrid, walking through the matchup, talking about the core pieces and the core engine of the deck. So if you haven't checked that video out yet, please do consider doing so. I'll drop the link down in the video description below. And while you're at it, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We'll greatly appreciate it. Any support to the channel would truly mean a lot. And it does really help us, helping the algorithm, helping us out really helps us grow, and hopefully helps the Digimon community grow as a whole. But enough yapping from me. We're gonna jump into the video. Today's focus is gonna be a deck that a lot of folks have been asking for, as well as a deck that I feel like is gonna be actually a pretty big sleeper moving into the national tournament in due time, and that deck is 3 Great Angels. Alrighty guys, so 3 Great Angels, or Angels as a deck, is one that I admit myself that I slept on for sure, until I played against it. A few of you commented on some of the recent videos about how Angels is definitely a deck to be wary of, and I 100% agree. Is a very difficult matchup for myself, and I think into today's meta, which is very blue dominant, it really does do a lot of crazy things and has a very good matchup against the meta. So I definitely think it's been on an interesting journey to get to where it is today. I think when it first came out as an archetype, a lot of folks were very much on the sort of vaccine Magna engine, where you really focused on the Magna X and all your armors, as opposed to the pure Angels build. If anything, Angels felt just sort of a lesser version of Magna X at the time, which is why I feel like it may not have really been in the spotlight as much as it is now. But I do think after TK got restricted, and we started to see the limitations on what vaccine armors could do, I think the kitchen really opened up, and a lot of pure Angel enthusiasts were really able to flesh out the deck, cook up a list that really solved it in a way and really made it work. And we have a formula now that a lot of us can base our Angel builds off of, that really comprise the core ideas and the core principles of the deck. So the main idea of Angels is to utilize the protection effects of the top end, which is the Minimon, and you essentially try to produce a wide board of protected Angels that not only provide like an imminent lethal threat because you've got like 5-6 bodies out on the board that can be doing big checks, but you also have a wide board that's protected and provides a counter ace threat during your opponent's turn, which really stifles their game plan. You have got access to cards like Angemon Ace, Magna Angemon Ace, as well as, in my opinion, sort of the like MVP support card of this deck, which is the 6-drop, I believe it's BT16 Magna Angemon. You have very, very cheap and efficient ways to climb up into a Dominimon and build up your board state and really snowball from there. And as you start to build up your board state and flood the field, you've got access to really, really strong ace cards like Shadow Seraphi Ace, Cherubimon Ace, BT14 Seraphimon is also a top end that is not to be slept on. And you have access to all these strong cards to provide almost like a defensive option to really just starve your opponent of any sort of advantage and resource that they can use to try to swing the game in their favor. I almost view this as almost like a siege mentality where you really want to get into Dominimon, you want to be able to establish a board presence, you wide board, you have not just aggression up on the field, but like I said, a lot of defensive counter options up on the field that really just drain your opponent's resources. If they trigger your trap, you go ahead and ace, you take away their stack, you take away their board, and that's when you really want to be able to, as a good Angels player, determine is it safe to go for lethal, or do I wait that extra turn or two, really starve them of their resources, and then go for lethal. But the deck is really, really good at being able to just take you out of the game in the right matchup, right? Now, with that all being said, I do believe that Angels is a deck that has a very high skill curve. It requires a lot of practice. It requires a very, very skilled pilot to take it to the promised land and have this deck really show what it can do. I think if you do have that pilot, you do have that practice base and that knowledge of the game, then this deck can definitely go out and do some crazy things and really wreak havoc on the meta. But I do think that if you're sort of newer to the game or you're just fresh to the deck, haven't played a lot of it, there's a lot of effects, a lot of different sequencing decisions that you have to make that could trip you up. So I definitely think that it has a very high skill curve, but a lot of payout for pilots who can really dedicate the time and really commit to the deck. Now, there is a lot of player creativity that can go behind yellow in general as an archetype, but really I think in particular behind the Angels deck itself. But the core will stay the same, so I'll pop my deck list up here. This is what I've been working with and kind of playing around as I test. I am trying to play this a little bit more often just so that I can get an idea of how, my opponents potentially will like to set up plays or how sort of they view the game state, just because I feel like it helps me understand the deck a little bit better. I'm not going to claim to be an expert Angels player by any means, so if there's anybody of you out there who would recommend suggestions, revisions, feel free to correct me, feel free to give me suggestions because I'm always game, like I said, for it. But that all being said, let's kind of walk through sort of like a typical setup for your board state and how this deck can really snowball and do some damage. Alrighty guys, so what we have set up here is a pretty standard yellow Angels, yellow vaccine setup, right? We've seen it before. We've seen the Patamon and Raising. We've got the BT14 limited TK out on the field already. And just, I think for efficiency's sake, just to illustrate how memory efficient this deck is, let's just say we got choked to 1, right? We're put at 1. We're going to start our main phase here by pushing up the Patamon. We'll utilize Patamon's effect to go ahead, search security. Hopefully at this point you've set up your security enough to kind of know what's in there. If it's early games and you're just doing the Gamba, all power to you, which I think is also still a very viable play. But say here, just for illustrations purposes, we go ahead and we do hit an Angemon Evo off of that. We can then proc Patamon's effect to tuck a vaccine trait to the bottom of security. And here I think you have a couple options. Here, I think your two best options, though, are going to be Dominimon and Andromon Ace. So the reason I would pick Domini as opposed to Andromon here is if you just peeked at security, you know that there's no Dominimon inside. You kind of want to, you want a Dominimon in there as a target for a potential Magna Angemon play, right? So you definitely want to keep this guy in security, at least one of them in security at all times, just so that you can proc that either on play or on Evo effect. Now, if you know you have a Dominimon in there already and you know it's kind of big chillin' over there, then I say it's safe to put Angemon Ace in there because, again, the best target, in my opinion, is from going into a Domini is to play out Angemon Ace because they synergize so well together that getting a Angemon Ace out for free off of a Domini effect, I think is golden for most Angels players. So for illustration purposes here, let's just say we go ahead and we tug the Domini off of Patamon's effect, which will allow me to suspend TK to gain a memory. If they don't have a memory blocker or memory floodgate, Patamon will also gain me a memory, so we go up to 3. Here, then we can choose to go into the BT16 Magna Angemon, which on Evo will let me search security once again. We can go into said Dominimon here for a reduced cost of 2. And then to complete Magna Angemon's effect, since we did Evo, we go ahead and tuck something with Angels, Archangels, etc. to the bottom of our security stack. Here, we can just go ahead and choose Angemon Ace. Then we can resolve Dominimon's effect, which is, again, search security, play out something, which we will choose to play her out, shuffle security, and that's it. You don't recover off of that effect. Now, here you can do a couple of things, right? Here, Domini already negs 7k on a body. If you've got sufficient board control and you just want to leave it at that, great. You're fine. You're golden, and you can kind of pass turn. If you want to either get rid of a second stack or build DP so that you get rid of a big level 6 or a level, level 5, level 6, you can proc Angemon Ace's on play effect, which is to trash top or bottom card of security. To give something an additional minus 6k DP. So again, like I said, for additional board control or getting rid of a bigger body, say we go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and trash top, which will be an Angemon Ace. So we've effectively negged minus 6k. Just for, again, illustration purposes here, say this Angemon Ace was in fact a Gatomon. Gatomon actually would play out. It sees that something got removed and you gain a memory. Pretty good, right? So now you've effectively set up 3 bodies. 2 of them have protections. Domini will go ahead and just say no to removal. Angemon Ace will allow you to recover 1, putting you back at 4 security. And also, every time you proc Dominimon's effect, right? Say, as a Mirage player, I go ahead and target this Angemon Ace to bounce off of like a Zudo Ace or Mirage play. And I say no, Domini says we're going to block that effect. We'll go ahead and trash top card of security, trashing a Magna Angemon. You proc Angemon Ace's effect, which is all turns, not just during your turn, but all turns. Something gets removed from security, you can go ahead and recover 1. So you can go ahead, recover, and you don't take any hits there. So you can only imagine how annoying this can be if your deck doesn't have good ways to get rid of Dominimon. Because once Dominimon sticks, the game becomes infinitely harder for a very fair amount of decks, okay? And not only that, you have this card that'll make things stick. Angemon is going to stick unless, again, you raid into it, you punch it, or you DP minus it. But as long as it's on the board, it is a very, very viable threat for Ace Evos with Cherubi Ace, Shadow Seraphimon Ace, which you can only imagine, like, if you Cherubi Ace, you play out more bodies. You can Shadow Seraph Ace to de-digivolve and have a blocker and pop. So there's so many things you can do with your level 5s and your level 6s here that really starve your opponent of any like foothold in the game. Another thing to keep in mind too is, a lot of times you'll see Angels players not kind of swing and chip down at their opponent. In my opinion, like I said earlier, the difference between a really strong Angels player versus someone that's maybe a little bit more inexperienced or a little fresh to the deck is to really know when to swing and go for lethal versus maybe when to wait an extra turn or 2. Especially with the game being as like super like resource reliant, tamer reliant as it is right now. You always have to be mindful of like swinging, hitting a Davis Ken, a Takuya, training, scrambles, right? Where sometimes that one little piece gives your opponent just that glimmer of hope to maybe make a comeback play. So if you can just sit down and say, look, I'm just going to wait until you're completely out of the game and then go for lethal, you typically want to do that, which is why more often than not, if you're going up against a really good Angels player, you're going to be facing an absolutely disgusting board state of like 5, 6 bodies, sometimes even more, just to guarantee that when they are going to go and swing for the fences, they're swinging to take game, right? And another thing I will point out before we kind of move on here is that, say you don't even have the resources to go up the line and you just have this guy in hand, this Magna Angemon, there's nothing wrong with just hard slamming it for 6, going into Dimini, and you can reproduce this board state over here, right? It's a very, very cheap, effective way to get into your top end. You may end up passing over a few more memory, but even at 4 or 5 memory, you've got a board state that just says, deal with me. And if you don't, too bad, I'm going to deal with you, right? So that's sort of the core engine and the core sort of like game plan behind Angels. And it's really, really disgusting, really, really filthy. Another card that I will highlight as well is this BT14 Seraphimon. I do like it as a potential target to go over your level 5s, for example, right? Like Angemon Ace, Magna Angemon Ace. Now, you do lose that. You do lose some ace threat. You don't lose all of your ace threat, because remember that Shadow Seraphi still evos on top of Seraphimon. So you can still, in theory, ace evo Shadow Seraph over Seraph. Now, why I like this card is that it's additional recovery. So if you have a Dominimon on board, you can go ahead and recover 1. It gives you extra protection, right? And another thing too is with how often you're cycling security, moving in and moving out, it's very, very easy to give this guy check +1, but it's even easier to -7k something, -7k on something on your opponent's board state, which can absolutely just mess up their game plan, right? You can easily recover, slam down another ace, give them even additional minus like 4 or 5k DP, and you've effectively cleared out like another level 6, right? So a lot of defensive tools in this deck that I think really make it a very strong counter pick to a lot of these aggressive blue decks that are very prominent in today's meta. And speaking of aggressive blue decks, let's kind of change gears a little bit and let's talk about how I, as a Mirage player, approach this deck, and also some of the card choices that I use that I like in this matchup. Alrighty guys, so as I said earlier, Angels is a very, very difficult matchup for me. It's probably one of the matchups that I'm most scared to face in a couple weeks. I'd even go as far as to say that this is almost like a direct counter pick as to what I want to be doing, because it truly just says no to what my deck wants to do and shuts it down. The Dominimon effect to give protection is a really, really hard mechanic for me to get out, like I said earlier, because I don't have D-Digivolve, I don't have DP reduction, and I don't have Raid or the ability to just like punch things in the face. So more often than not, Dimini is on the board and it's there to stay. So it's very, very difficult for me to deal with sort of an early Dominimon play by an Angels player. And on top of that, the ace threat makes it so that I can't just swing willy-nilly, because I typically will just end up losing a lot of my resources. So my usual approach to this is a very similar approach to how I just go up against yellow decks in general, particularly like the Vaccine engine, right? Is that I view their security as almost like a resource pool. The more security they have early game, the more resources they have to use with Dimini's protection, in essence, right? Not only is it less, like, if you can chip down security, not only is it less sort of potential hits for Patamon for cheap evos and reduced evo costs, the less security they have, the less they can protect with Dimini, because Dimini needs there to be security for you to be able to proc protection. Now, if you chip them down early enough or quickly enough, they may not be able to kind of protect for very long. They may be able to get a few protections here and there, but once they're down to 0, you're free to kind of go crazy, right? And that's usually my approach to this, is that I take a bit more of a control-y aspect or control-y perspective to this, where my focus is to either really control the board state and just wipe everything off the board, get rid of security as quickly as possible. But if they do establish Dimini, then I shift gears a little bit and say, okay, we're going to focus on just targeting their angels and forcing them to proc protection, right? And have them make that decision. So usually what I'll say is that if they have a Dimini out on board, my goal and my aim is to like utilize my Hexablow, first of all, to make it so that they can't swing and really rush me down. Because Hexablow more often than not will have way more sources than they can build up into. So Hex is a very good way of just saying, look, if you don't deal with Hex, you can't swing, you can't push aggression, and I'm allowed to build up my game plan. So having an early Hex out is huge. And then on top of that, once Hex is out, I start to focus on targeting their angels and attempting to get rid of them as quickly and as many times as possible. So cards like Zudo Ace is going to be huge against angels because not only can I strip ace cards, I can also just target cards without a source. So I could target level 6 aces, level 5 aces, Magnamons. I can even target Dominimon if I really wanted to, and I can try to just get rid of them, right? The more they protect, the more they get rid of security, the less they'll recover eventually, and then I can go for game of, after I've sort of whittled down their resources there. BT11 Mirage, needless to say, is again one of those key cards that will always come up and will always be able to provide bounce as well as memory efficiency. I'm gonna point out something real quick here too about BT11 Mirage Gao is that, say hypothetically I go into Mirage, right? I attempt to bounce their level 5 ace, for example, like an Angelmon ace. If the Angels player uses their Dominimon effect, they can choose to do so. They'll pitch security to keep the Angelmon on the field. More often than not, they will, I believe, just because that kind of floodgate of like giving me memory and then having an additional overflow is very painful. So if they do trash top card of security, they'll keep their board. But remember that BT11 Mirage says that if no card is added, then they have to add the top card of security to hand. So effectively what I can do, right, is that I can target an ace, they protect, they pitch a security, nothing gets added to hand, so then I can go ahead and have them take top card of security to hand, and that's effectively taking out 2 securities. Now, Angelmon Ace can always recover 1, so you kind of net lose them 1 as opposed to 2, but it is something that helps you keep whittling down their security. So more often than not, my game plan is to get, like I said, Hex out first, then just try to get as many Mirages on the board as I possibly can, and target their angels so that they're forced to proc their protection effects until they have nothing left, right? Other cards that I can use are things like Mirage Gao Burst Mode. The new Gabubond Ace card is something that you can consider as a tech choice for this matchup. I'm still very much on the fence of if I want to keep him in there or not, but Gabubond Ace being able to target multiple bodies can be nice. Do keep in mind though, since it is one effect that's causing this to go away, Dimini protection will be a blanket protection. So it's not like if you target 2 bodies, Dimini has to pitch 2. Dimini only has to pitch 1 and you protect both. So do keep that in mind. That's also why I'm sort of 50-50 on it. But I do think the game plan, if you are a Mirage player going up against Angels, is to say, look, let's get our hexes out. Let's prevent them from swinging. And what we're going to do is we're just going to keep attempting to bounce their aces so that they're forced to just purge and protect, with either the hopes of them decking out or they just run out of security and they don't see enough effects like Dimini and protection and stuff that they end up taking out their security, and then you can go ahead and go for game because now they're no longer protected. So that's really in general my game plan. But like I said, it's a very, very difficult matchup. It's a very grindy matchup. And it's just one misplay can really just take it away from you, right? So you do have to be at the top of your game to beat this deck if you're a blue player. And I think it's really, really hard right now, but definitely doable. I wouldn't say it's all doom and gloom by any means. I will say here, guys, unfortunately, no gameplay this week, mainly because it's been hard. We've all been busy, and there really isn't anybody who's like dedicated Angels that I've been able to test against. I know there's probably a few of you out there who are like, Ben, why didn't you ask me? You should have asked me. Sorry. Life's been busy and I just wanted to get caught up on things and I wanted to get you guys out here. I did do a lot of talking as well, so hopefully this is a little bit more of an easier video to swallow. Just get through the sort of gibberish, and then, you know, if you're looking for match play, if you're looking for gameplay of Angels, we recently did do a match commentary video where I'm piloting Angels. Check that one out. That's really the game plan and the combos and how, you know, the matchup is against sort of a still meta contender, right, with Purple Hybrid. So I'll drop the link to that video down in the video description below. But yeah, I think that should be able to cover it for gameplay. And that should wrap up the video, guys. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. I know there's been a few of you who've been really asking for like an Angels focused video for this series, so this one's for you. It's definitely a very tough matchup for me, and I definitely will be hoping to get more practice in with it over the next couple of weeks. It does a lot of interesting things, and it can be very strong in a very oppressive way. So definitely a deck to not sleep on. I do think we're going to get some Angels players in Top Cut for sure, and I could definitely see some Angels sneaking into the top 16, top 8 moving forward. So I'm excited to see how things turn out. As always, we're going to be moving forward with a couple more meta decks in the next couple of weeks as we wrap the competitive season up, so be on the lookout for it. And, you know, before we wrap the video up, we're delving into the holiday season here, so we just wanted to send everybody our best wishes. We hope everyone's having a great time with friends, family, and loved ones. It's a special time. It happens once a year where we can really just be at home and be with family, be with friends, and we all hope that you're having a great time. We send you all our best wishes, and I know that, you know, I can speak on behalf of everybody here at Hyper Colosseum that we truly appreciate everybody that's been part of our community this past year. People who've been with us since day one, to people who, you know, just joined our community yesterday, our locals crew, everybody, Sully's, Deans, like, we truly appreciate every one of you guys. We wouldn't be here without your support and without your love, and, you know, your support really pushes us to be better every day. So we really hope to ring in the new year together on a strong note, and we hope to make it an even better year moving forward. So as sort of like a thank you to you all, thank you. Have a great holiday season. We're going to be cranking out some videos over the next couple weeks to wrap up the year, so hopefully y'all enjoy it. And we'll see ya on that flippy flip. Bye-bye.